I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am. It's been a wild, soul-crushing ride, and I need to get it out somehow. Maybe it'll help me figure out what the hell just happened, or maybe it'll just serve as a warning for anyone fool enough to get married without really knowing what they're in for. It all started a little over a year ago. My wife, Lisa, and I had been together for 5 years. We weren't perfect, but I'd always believed we loved each other. She was the kind of woman who made everything seem effortless. Bright brown hair that caught the sunlight, a smile that made your knees wobble, and an energy that was contagious. We got engaged on a mountain overlook during a weekend trip, and I thought I knew her, thought I knew us. The wedding was supposed to be a fairy tale. We planned it for months, invited family, friends from out of town, the whole 9 yards. I remember standing at the altar, heart pounding, staring into her eyes as she looked radiant in her white dress. I was so sure that this was forever. But then, things started to unravel fast. Little things. She'd be late for dinner dates, say she was busy, then disappear into her phone. At first I brushed it off as work stress or being tired. But then I caught her in small lies. She'd say she was at yoga, but her lipstick was smudged and I could smell perfume I didn't recognize. I shrugged it off, convinced myself I was paranoid. I was too in love to believe otherwise. It wasn't until a few months later, when I found the first real piece of evidence, that everything shattered. I had a suspicion, but I didn't want to face it. I was sitting on my laptop in our apartment working on a project when I noticed a message pop up on her phone. It was from a number I didn't recognize. I saw a string of texts, flirty, suggestive, a lot of "miss you" and "can't wait to see you again." My stomach twisted like a knot. I stared at it, frozen, mouth dry. I felt my jaw tighten. I could barely breathe. I clicked open the message thread, and as I read, my stomach dropped even further. It was her. Lisa talking to someone she called Mike, our best man from the wedding, our best man, for God's sake. They had been texting for months. I could see their plans, their flirtations, the way they'd been sneaking around behind my back. I sat there numb, my hands clammy. All those nights I'd held her close, trusting her, believing she loved me. And she'd been lying right to my face. She had been cheating, not just with anyone, but with the one person I trusted the most after her. I remember feeling a hot surge of betrayal so intense I wanted to scream. Instead, I clenched my fists so tight my nails bit into my palms. That day, everything changed. I knew this wasn't just an affair. It was a sign that I was a pawn in her perfect fantasy. I felt the walls closing in, my stomach flipping again as I realized I'd been played. For months, I'd been blind, convinced I had a partner who loved me. Now I wondered if she'd ever loved me at all, or if I had just been some placeholder in her life until something better came along. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every glance, every word. I couldn't sleep. I kept asking myself, was I ever truly loved, or was I just part of her show? That question haunted me. I felt sick, angry, humiliated, and the worst part, I'd let her get away with it for so long. I was so desperate to believe in us, I ignored all the signs. I was a fool to think she was faithful. Now I was stuck with this mess, trying to decide what to do next. I'll tell you this. Once you find out your wife's been cheating on you with your best man, everything shifts, trust shatters, and suddenly, revenge seems like the only thing that can give you some peace. That's what I'm planning now, but I'm not naive enough to think it's going to be clean or easy. What I want to know is, how do you even deal with the kind of betrayal that cuts so deep it feels like your insides are tearing apart? Because right now, I just want to make her hurt like she hurt me. And I know it's wrong, but I also know it's the only thing that feels right. In this moment, I spent the next few days in a fog, cycling through every emotion: rage, disbelief, deep sadness. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face smiling at me during our wedding, then that damned text thread with Mike. It was like a slap in the face every time I thought I'd moved past it. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How blind had I been? I know I should have confronted her then and there, but I couldn't. My head was spinning too fast. Instead, I started to formulate a plan, something deliberate, something that would leave her feeling just as broken as I was. It wasn't revenge because I was angry. It was about reclaiming some measure of control after feeling so powerless. I needed to see her sweat, to see her realize she'd lost not just me but her false sense of security. The first thing I did was gather evidence. I went through her phone, her emails, her social media. I downloaded everything I found, screenshots, messages, even a few photos she'd taken during our last trip. I wanted to make sure I'd have proof if I ever decided to confront her publicly or privately. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about exposing her. It was about making her understand that I knew that I'd caught her and there was no way back. I also started to think about how I could turn her own game against her. If she thought I was just going to walk away quietly, she was dead wrong. I wanted to hit her where it hurt, emotionally, psychologically. I wanted her to see that I was done being the fool in her story. I'd been a pawn, yes, but now I was the one holding the chessboard. One night I sat in front of the mirror, breathing deeply, trying to calm the storm inside me. My palms were slick with sweat. I ran my fingers through my hair and looked into my own eyes. I realized I had to be smart. This wasn't a moment for raw emotion alone. If I wanted to make her suffer, I had to be strategic. I had to be cold and calculated. That's when I decided no more hiding, no more pretending I didn't know. I'd set the stage, give her enough rope to hang herself. I'd make her see that her perfect fantasy was crumbling and she'd be the one to pay for it. I started planning my confrontation. First, I reached out to a private investigator I knew. I paid him to dig into her whereabouts, to confirm if she was still sneaking around with Mike or if she'd moved on to someone else. I wanted to be sure, and I wanted proof. The last thing I needed was to accuse her without something solid in my hands. As I waited for the results, I kept reminding myself of what this was really about. Not just revenge, but reclaiming my dignity. If she thought she could cheat and lie without consequences, she was dead wrong. I wouldn't be her fool anymore. I was done playing nice. The night I got the intel from the investigator, I sat in my apartment, staring at the message on my phone. It confirmed what I had suspected. She was still in contact with Mike. Not just texts, but secret meetings, too. That was the final nail in the coffin. The woman I thought I knew was nothing more than a lie, and I was done being a victim. Now I had to decide how to execute my plan. I wanted her to feel the weight of betrayal without crossing the line into chaos. I needed a plan that would make her realize her game was over and make her regret ever crossing me. I knew I was capable of doing something drastic, but I had to stay focused, calculated. I wanted her to finally see that I wasn't a pawn anymore. I was the one in control. So I sat back and put the pieces together. I'd wait until the right moment when she'd think everything was fine. Then I'd strike. I'd reveal everything, her lies, the evidence, her infidelity. Let her stew in her own guilt. Let her see what it feels like to be exposed, powerless. That's how I'd make her pay. The question now was, how much damage could I really do? What's the line I should cross? I didn't have an answer yet, but I was determined to find it. Because at this point, I didn't just want her to hurt. I wanted her to know she'd lost everything she thought she had. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to start rebuilding what's left of me. The more I thought about it, the clearer my plan became. I wasn't interested in some petty revenge, a slap in the face just to satisfy my anger. No, I wanted something more calculated, something that would leave her reeling, make her doubt everything she ever believed about herself and our marriage. I wanted her to feel the cold, sharp sting of betrayal without me even laying a finger on her. First step was timing. I knew I couldn't just drop the evidence anytime and expect her to crumble. That would be too obvious, too quick. I had to make her think she was still in control, still the one calling the shots. So I waited. I watched her routines, listened to her conversations, and kept my ears open. I needed her to slip up again, to give me an opening. I also started planting little seeds of doubt. Not directly, no, that would be too obvious, but subtly. I'd mention things like, "I saw your message from Mike," or "Your tone when you talked about your day seemed off." Small comments, small moments that would make her nervous, anxious, paranoid. I wanted her to start feeling the pressure, to see her carefully constructed fantasy unraveling without her realizing I was the one pulling the strings. Meanwhile, I kept gathering. I reconnected with the pie I hired. He confirmed her meetings with Mike, more than I'd bargained for. Secret dinners, late night whispering in some dark parking lot. It was all there. I even got photos from a discreet camera he set up outside her favorite coffee shop. She was still lying, still sneaking around. That confirmed everything I'd thought. This wasn't some fling, it was a full-blown affair. I remember sitting in my car one evening just staring at her house, feeling a mix of nausea and cold resolve. My hands clenched the steering wheel so tight I felt the bones in my fingers ache. She thought she'd gotten away with it. She thought I was too naive, too in love to see what was really going on. Well, I'd prove her wrong. That night, I drafted the letter I was going to send her. Not a confrontation in words, but a confession, proof of her betrayal, a detailed account of her lies and her secret meetings. I wanted her to read it in the quiet, to feel the weight of her own treachery. I knew how a good revelation could strip someone bare, leave them trembling in their own skin. But I wasn't just going to send the letter. No, I had a different idea. I wanted her to find it when she least expected, to have her own world crumble around her. So I planned to leave it where she'd discover it, on her pillow, in her car, or inside her purse, somewhere she'd be forced to confront her lies completely unprepared. I also arranged for a fake email account. I'd send her a message, revealing everything I knew but from an anonymous source. I wanted her to question her own perceptions, to be paranoid that everyone was against her. That's when I knew she'd start unraveling mentally and I'd be waiting in the wings to see her fall apart. The night I finally set everything in motion, I felt my stomach tighten again, but this time with anticipation. I'd done everything I could to prepare. Now it was just about waiting. Waiting for her to slip up, to be caught off guard. I could barely breathe, my palms sweaty. Every minute felt like an hour. When I left that letter on her pillow, I knew it was over for her. She'd thought she was smart. She thought she was untouchable. But I'd made sure she'd realize she was just another woman caught in her own web of lies. The next morning, I watched her from a distance, heart pounding in my chest as she found it. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled. That's when I saw her truly break. She called out to me, voice shaky and trembling. "What's this? Who sent this?" I just looked at her, cold and steady. "You lied to me, Lisa. You cheated on me with our best man, and now everyone's going to know." Her eyes darted around, lost in a sea of shame and fear. She tried to deny it, of course, but I didn't care because I'd already won. And in that moment I knew I'd never loved her, not really. I'd just been a pawn in her perfect fantasy, and now I was finally taking back my power. Watching her crumble that morning was almost cathartic. Her face went from confusion to horror, and then straight into panic. She looked like a trapped animal. Her hands clutching at the letter, her eyes darting around as if expecting someone else to walk into the room. I stayed silent, letting her stew in her own guilt. She finally broke the silence, voice trembling. How long have you known?" I crossed my arms, feeling the cold satisfaction seep into my chest. "A few days. I've been watching you, waiting for the right moment. The proof was there all along. I just needed to see if you'd slip up again." I paused, watching her eyes widen with realization. "You thought you could keep lying, keep sneaking around, and I'd never find out. Well, guess what? I did." She looked down at the letter, trembling fingers clutching the paper like it was her last lifeline. "You're overreacting." I was confused, stressed. "It didn't mean anything. It's just what?" I interrupted sharply, voice cold. "Just a mistake. You think I don't see what this really was. You lied to me. You used me, used us. And for what? A fling? Don't call it that." She yelled suddenly, eyes blazing with anger and desperation. "It was a mistake, okay? I was stupid, but was one time. I didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head, feeling the familiar surge of anger. "A mistake? You've been hiding this for months, lying to my face every day. Do you even remember what honesty feels like, or was I just a game to you, a pawn in your perfect fantasy?" Her lip quivered. "I never wanted to hurt you, I swear." "You swear?" I cut her off again, voice rising. "You swear that you never wanted to hurt me, because I sure as hell don't feel like I was loved. I feel like I was played, manipulated, used, and now I see the truth. You've been cheating on me with our best man, our best man. How do you even look at me right now?" She swallowed hard, tears welling up, but she stayed silent. Instead, she looked like she was trying to find some kind of explanation, some way to make it all better, but I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I took a step closer, feeling a strange mixture of rage and cold resolve. "You want to lie some more? Spin your little story, fine, but I'm Done pretending, I'm done being your fool. You've lost me, Lisa, completely. Her eyes finally filled with tears. Please don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to counseling, try to work through this. I snorted. Counseling? You think that's going to fix what you've done? You think I can just forget this happened? No, not anymore. I'm not some idiot who's going to stay and be a punching bag for your lies. I turned to walk out, feeling my heart hammering in my chest. I knew I couldn't stay here anymore, not without exposing everything for what it was. Before I left, I looked back at her, voice sharp. You're going to have to live with what you did. I hope it eats you alive. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. I'd finally confronted her, revealed the truth she'd been hiding. But what came next? That's what scared me. I had no idea how far I needed to go, or if I even had the strength for it. All I knew was, I had to make her see that I wasn't the fool anymore. Her betrayal had set a new course, and I was about to take control of the ship. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at the sky, wondering how I'd let it get this far. But deep down, I knew I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without consequences. Not this time. The confrontation left me drained but oddly focused. I realized I had to escalate my plan since she still didn't seem to grasp the gravity of what she'd done. No more gentle hints, no more waiting around for her to crack. If I wanted her to understand she'd crossed a line, I had to hit her where it really hurt. That meant executing the next phase of my revenge, one that would shake her to her core without crossing the line into outright chaos. I spent the next day preparing. I made sure my phone was clean of any traces, no texts, no calls, so she wouldn't suspect I was planning anything. I wanted her to think I was just leaving, that I was walking away quietly, unbothered. That's when I started to put my plan into motion. First, I contacted the private investigator again. I asked him to go deeper, check for any additional meetings, secret accounts, or possible new lovers. I wanted a full picture. When the results came back, I had what I needed. She was still seeing Mike regularly, even meeting him after I'd confronted her. She was stubborn, I'd give her that. But I also saw an opening. Later that evening, I set up my final move. I ordered a discreet camera and placed it in my apartment, facing her door. I wanted proof, more than just texts and photos. I needed her in the act, caught in her own lie. I was going to make her see herself from my perspective, exposed, vulnerable, and finally punished. The rest of the night I waited anxiously, heart pounding. When I finally saw her pull into the driveway, my stomach clenched. I hit record on my phone, then quietly watched as she slipped inside. I knew I had what I needed. It was time to go further. The next step, sending her the ultimate message. I crafted a message from an anonymous account, one that made her doubt everything she thought she knew. A simple email with no greeting, just the evidence. Photos of her in the act, screenshots of her secret messages, everything I'd gathered. I hit send, then sat back, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. What would she do? Would she try to deny it again? Or would she finally break? I didn't care. I just wanted her to see that I wasn't some fool anymore. I was the one finally controlling the narrative. The following morning, I knew she'd wake up to it. I watched her from a safe distance. Her face went pale as she checked her email, then her entire body stiffened. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the evidence. She looked like she'd been socked in the stomach. She called me, voice raw and trembling. Who sent this? How did you find out? I didn't bother to hide the truth. It doesn't matter who sent it. What matters is that you finally see what you've done, and if you think this is over, you're dead wrong. She tried to deny it at first, but I could see her crumbling. Her face, flushed with shame, told me she knew she'd lost. I didn't say a word, just listened as her voice cracked, pleading. You've got to understand. I never loved Mike. I was stupid, I swear. I was just lonely. Save it, I interrupted. I don't want to hear your excuses anymore. I've seen enough. You thought you could lie and cheat your way through this. Well, guess what? I'm done being the fool. I'm done pretending I don't see what you really are. Her eyes filled with tears and she sank onto the couch, trembling. Please don't do this. We can still fix it. But I knew better. I looked at her, cold and sure. No, Lisa, we're done. You crossed a line I'll never forget. And I'm not sticking around to watch you crawl further into your lies. You want to keep cheating, keep lying, that's on you, but I'm done playing your fool. I handed her a set of keys. You want to keep pretending everything's fine, you can take your things and I'll be here cleaning out the house. And don't bother trying to contact me again. You've lost that privilege too." She stared at the keys in my hand, eyes wide, tears streaming down her face. She knew it was over. I didn't need to say more. I turned around, walked out of the house, and closed the door behind me. All I could think about was how I'd finally taken control. The betrayal had cut so deep I thought I'd never feel whole again. But I'd learned that sometimes the only way to heal is to rip out the poison. And right now I was doing just that. That's how I ended it. I handed her the keys, packed her things, and told her to leave. No more lies, no more pretending. And as I watched her walk out, I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. The pain hadn't disappeared, but I was finally free of her web. And I knew I'd never let her do this to me again. The house was eerily quiet once she finally left. I stayed there for a moment, just standing in the living room, staring at the empty space where she'd been. It felt like the first time I could breathe freely in months. The air was thick with a strange kind of relief, mixed with a deep ache that I knew might never fully go away. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like had taken back some control over my life. I took a long, slow breath and started gathering her things. It was surreal, like I was doing something I'd never imagined myself capable of. Every shirt, every piece of jewelry, each item I packed into boxes carried the weight of everything I'd endured. I moved mechanically, trying to tell myself this was necessary. This was the only way I could finally be free. As I packed, I reflected on what had transpired. How I'd gone from a man blindly in love to someone unraveling the lies to finally confronting her in the most brutal way I knew. It wasn't pretty and it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She'd spent months lying, sneaking around, playing her game, and I'd spent just as long pretending I didn't see it. Now I was free from her web of deceit. When I handed her the keys, her tear-streaked face haunted me. Part of me felt a flicker of guilt. Maybe I'd gone too far. But then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the way she'd used me like a pawn in her twisted fantasy. I knew I couldn't stay anymore, not without losing what little dignity I had left. I made a final pass through the house. Everything that reminded me of her, her perfume lingering in the air, the framed photos of happier times, became just objects to be packed away, memories I'd soon forget. I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. It was as if a chapter in my life had finally closed and I was turning the page, ready to start somewhere new. Outside, the sky was turning shades of orange and purple. The cool evening air brushed against my skin, grounding me. I watched her car disappear down the street, taking her away from my life for good. That's when I realized that I'd done what I needed to do. I'd revealed the truth, faced her betrayal head-on, and taken back my power. It's strange how life can change in a moment. One day, you're blindly trusting someone you love, and the next, you're standing alone, rebuilding from the ruins. But I knew this was for the best. I owed myself that much. As I sat on my porch, I thought about the future. There's a long road ahead, but I also knew I'd come out stronger, wiser. It's not about revenge anymore, it's about reclaiming what's left of myself. I'll mend what I can and I'll move forward step by step. And so, I took one last look at the empty house and turned away. I left the keys on the porch, stepped into the night, and walked into a new beginning. The betrayal was done, but the healing had just started. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to finally find yourself.